Alright, let's talk about Radio City Serenade. I have a lot to say about this song, so I apologize for too many words in this intro, but hey, the song itself has 3 intros that take up a quarter of the song, so I'm just getting inspired by Mark here. Anyway, I'll put a time code to skip right to playing bits because I know how annoying guitar lessons with too much talking can be. Radio City Serenade is one of these optimism anthems, as I call them. These are songs Mark Knopfler wrote which are so sweet, so optimistic, warm and lovely. You can't help but feel great every time you listen to them. Songs like One More Matinee, The Ragpicker's Dream, All That Matters, Last Laugh, Why Worry, songs like that. Songs that feel like they are ancient lullabies more than anything. And Mark is known as a raging optimist, so it all adds up. Radio City Serenade is also one of these deceptive songs that feel way more complicated than they really are. But the majority of the song is just these 2 folky A and B sections alternating, using roughly 5 chords. Where it gets complicated, there are not 1, but like I said, 3 intros in a row and a custom outro section. So it's 4 short but unique sections, all containing some sophisticated chords on top of the simple tune, and as well as a solo section. I can't pretend it's an easy song. Clearly it's not. That's why the video is so long. But it is very friendly and approachable. In the first intro, you have this ambient atmosphere with homage to Down to the Waterline, with Mark imitating foghorns with guitar, which I always loved. What a simple but brilliant idea. It takes a genius and a volume pedal to discover a foghorn in a half diminished chord, and it's easier to play than imitating a train. Then comes a jazzy piano intro, which reminds me of a typical piano straight from a Broadway musical or Frank Sinatra album. I'll talk about this intro specifically in the standard tuning rhythm guitar part, because you can sort of play it on a guitar. So you think, oh my, what this song is going to be. The actual intro of the song with trumpet played by Chris Botti is where the action begins. So it's this unique blend of ambient music, jazz, folk music, Scottish music, film music, and you can even hear some of the lush orchestra on the record, so a touch of classical as well. I said film music, and if you know Ennio Morricone's beautiful theme, the strong Il Forte from The Good and the Bad and the Ugly, you'll immediately spot the connection. It's a serenade, a declaration of romantic affection towards one of the most prominent music locations in one of the most diverse cities out there, which I'll probably never visit in my lifetime, considering how it's going. And Radio City Music Hall hosts everything from the Lion King premiere to stand-up shows and talent shows, Penn and Teller and Grammys, jazz, rock or rap. So it makes sense to have an eclectic song like this about this eclectic place. I love it when Mark blends styles so seamlessly. And most importantly, you don't even think about it. You just listen to a great song people resonate with, judging by the number of requests I got for this song over the years. I know it's even a favorite song of Mark's for some of my viewers. And after I learned it properly, now I really love to play it casually. It's another beautiful song in my collection of songs. And right away you can hear not 1 but 2 rhythm guitars. And it happens to be one of the reasons it took me so long to get this song on my channel. Simply because I can't prioritize guitar parts here. So I need to cover both, and since they're so close, you need to deeply understand how it all works, how the parts perfectly complement each other and talk to each other. In Mark's music, everything is done for a reason, And these two rhythm guitars are a great example of that. It's not two rhythm guitars for the sake of two rhythm guitars. In Mark's music, never. The national guitar part is always nice to play, especially if you have a national guitar, which is not the case here, as you can see. It's usually in open G tuning in Mark's music, and here it has a capo on the capo on the 4th fret. So the song is therefore is in B major, an unusual key. Chet Atkins famously co-wrote a piece of music called To Be or Not to Be, because he felt there were not too many songs in B major. Well, here is one. I'll just play the intro and pause at every chord a little. This is an A minor 7 shape, which translates into C with G in the bass. Probably the best sounding open G chord because of this open first string, essentially making it a sus2 or add9 chord, which resolves perfectly back to open G, and a simple melody. Of course, as usual, I'll include all the written versions and tablatures in the description. I never sell written music, it's all for free in the description. The next part after these two alternating chords is where open tuning starts to lack a little bit, as you can't get any chord to sound great in open tuning. For example, it doesn't sound all that amazing with this D5 going to F diminished. Also very awkward to play, so it's best to minimize the melody here and skip the bass altogether, focusing on strings 4, 3 and 2. Same with this E minor, which is actually C major 7 in overall harmony, but as it's too awkward to play, it gets demoted to E minor played on 3 strings. And continuing with A minor, all these 4 chords sound best in minimalistic shapes. So it's already obvious how a single rhythm guitar part like this just won't be enough to do the song justice. That's why you hear the second guitar, to fill all the blank spaces left with the open G tuning. It doesn't happen, for instance, in Romeo and Juliet, because this song utilizes the full potential of the tuning and doesn't have complex changes like in the intro of Radio City. Continuing with this B minor, straight from the aforementioned Romeo and Juliet, among other open G songs, complete with this weird and awkward 3 fingers in a row, and index finger in one of the most ridiculous positions on the guitar you can find. Woo! The chord is mute, 4, 4, 4, 3, mute. But it's all for the sake of good sound. Like I discussed in my ancient Romeo and Juliet video, you can potentially replace this note with an open first string, but it will never sound good. so better get used to this monstrosity. Which is outright impossible to play for some of the people I try to teach this song to. I mean physically impossible, but usually it works fine. Then another impossible chord. This one here is one of my favorite places in the song in this tuning, because for the F chord, which is also incredibly difficult to play more than 3 strings, you can hear Mark play this beautiful scale using open strings. Reminds me of these scales with open strings finger pickers love to play a lot. And it's another instance of a simplified 3-string chord. This place in the intro has this Lydian sound to it, which is known as the cinematic mode, or brighter than the major mode, which adds a touch of cinema here. Next is real E minor, and of course, because it's even more awkward to play the E sus chord in this tuning, like the melody suggests, all you can do is play the single note melody. And at this point it's all down to 1 string. The intro ends with this C to G a few times, then C to D5, which is a simplified version of the first chord from Romeo and Juliet. Now it's missing the 3rd. Also, it's worth mentioning the ending of the intro has a few additional beats that are difficult to explain. So in my version I notated it like this. I basically added 3 bars of 2/4 time. And that's why the moment when the voice enters may be hard to count. Sound something like this. And I played the full intro slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. The rest of the song is way easier than the intro and contains all the same chords except for 1 or 2. So it goes like G to C, usually going to the C chord, which is this A minor 7 shape, through a little melody move. You can also go back to G through an even more beautiful melody. Which reminds me of the beloved Etude No. 3 in E major by Chopin. I think I already mentioned that in other videos. So, like half of the verse is G going to C and back. Now this is an interesting part. Speaking of Romeo and Juliet, observant viewers might remember I said for the Romeo, this E minor chord works best without the bass note on the second fret of the 6th string here. In Radio City it's the opposite, because in this song you don't have a very prominent first string. The bass now works favorably as I tend to block or ignore the first string, whereas in Romeo you can't get away from playing the first string. So it's a mostly strumming song after all. Radio City involves more picking. Subtle differences like that explains the different bass behavior on the same chord, same tuning. To end the verse, it goes through A minor, a simplified 3 strings A minor, and back to C with G in the bass. The turnaround is this deep D major again. Another confusing detail here is that in the ending of the verse, one bar ends with C major and another starts with the same chord. In standard tuning there is a trick to make it simpler, but in Open G you don't have that option, so there's only one way to play it really. I'll play the verse again slowly and I'll count the weird part. I'll try to count. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, as for the chorus, it contains yet another secret ingredient. Starting with Open G, so blow a kiss, radio city line, just like the verse, but instead of going to D5, which sounds kind of square and too simple, it instead goes to D7 in both guitar parts. And to me, this single chord choice provides the song with this timeless feel. It ties the song together, I think. In this case, the shape is mute or open, 2, open, 2, 1. So blow the kiss, the radio city line, forever seal it. The rest of the chords for the chorus are simple, and I've talked about them in the verse section. See how many similar chords you can catch. The only difference is this little open third string note before going to the solo or back to the verse on the D5 chord. The solo is played using the chorus sequence, the D7 included. Man, I love this song. So this is the entire song except for the ending. Mark could easily just repeated the intro note for note again and end the song like this. That's what an average songwriter would do. But a man with a black belt in songwriting throws an extra punch. And I gotta admit, I can't imagine the song without these two additional chords. Namely, these very difficult and lush chord changes. Merely two chords that are very difficult to play fully on the guitar, so much so that instead the orchestra is doing it. On the record, the guitar part is just a single note melody. But the bass would be something like this. So I would describe it like F6-9 chord going to E minor 7, and only then does it lead to the single point and a perfect ending. These three piano notes in octaves might be one of my favorite song endings in the entire MK songbook. So happy, so lush, so definitive. And that was only one rhythm guitar. Let's talk about what you can do in standard tuning. It's the same situation with the capo on the 4th fret, and what I'll do is go through the entire song and talk about chord shapes. The intro starts with C Virginia bass to G, or if you want to be exact, actually G with B in the bass, because that's what the bass is playing. D minor to F diminished is this shape: 1 mute open, 2 3 mute. For the second chord, one note changes. The next two chords are certainly one of the highlights of this intro. C major 7 going to A minor 7. As both chords are incredibly sweet by nature, the intro gets this melancholic feel in this place. Oh, and the C major 7 is of course also reinforced with G in the bass. Don't even try to play ordinary C major to A minor here. It will sound awful. I'm not going to do it. The next chord, however, is a standard B minor. So as the F major. And pretty much E minor, with maybe the additional second fret on the 3rd string for the melody. In this case, as I'm not using the 5th string, I can shift 2 fingers up a string and play this way. For the end of the intro, it's C to G, and then some form of D. Could be D with A in the bass, D5, or D with an F sharp in the bass. These are standard for folk chords I discussed hundreds of times in other songs. So 1, 2, 3, 4. verse is self-explanatory, except for maybe one part. This tricky part I was talking about. One way not to be confused is to play C with G after A minor, and for the next chord play C major. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, like this. I play the verse slowly, and like I did in the open G version, will highlight the timing for the tricky chord change. 2, 3, 4. Credit cards. Know how good it feels to silent man to steal, sitting on the sidewalk with a party. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now the chorus. In the open G version, I said the second chord has to be a D7, and it's true here as well. There are a couple of ways to approach this chord. One is more sophisticated and simpler. Simpler would be D7 with an F sharp in the bass. So blow a kiss, radio, city mine, forever silver. On the record, however, you can hear a more refined version. The same shape Mark used in All That Matters, putting the 7th on the bottom, on the 5th string there. Mute, 3, 4, 2, open, mute. So blow a kiss, radio, city mine, forever silhouette. So pretty, my beautiful rocket. If you play it like this, it really sounds like a lullaby, don't you think? So blow a kiss, the radio, city mine, forever silhouette. What's left to discuss are the 2 additional chords in the outro, and they are a bit more approachable in standard tuning. In fact, it also reminds me of the song Seattle from the same album, and I can play it like this. 1, mute, open, open, 1, mute. The melody starts on the 2nd fret on the 4th string. That would be something like F6-9 and to E minor 7. I said you can sort of play the piano intro on guitar, and I did it in the intro as well. It will never sound as good as a piano, but it's worth a try. Here's how I do it. I play G major 7, which goes to a diminished chord, a classic jazz move. Then goes another popular jazzy move. And the target here is this D7 with A in the bass. And by moving this note on the 4th string, I can move between the sus4 or the 7th sound, or play the melody of the song. And the position of the fingers is perfect to play the next melody note on the 5th fret, 2nd string. It's possible to play the next voicing exactly like on the record, in this extended B-7 shape. I also give these notes some space, not play them at the same time. And it brings me to the next melody note on the 1st string. Same idea on the E minor chord. I play the ending like this. A-7 with an additional 9th and G-sharp 6-9 for the finish, which then perfectly chromatically goes to the main intro of the song. Again slowly, that would be fantastic. That's the 2-guitar part breakdown of Radio City Serenade for you. So I hope it's obvious by now why 2 guitars were needed to record this song. I can also recommend checking out this cover. It's a rare sight to see a good cover of an underrated Knopfler song. Hope you liked it. Enjoy and good luck learning this beautiful serenade. Bye.